Most of the synths that I own are relatively new, meaning that they were released in the last 5 years or so. But recently I found this Prophet 12 for an absurdly low price. That's a story for an upcoming video. But in doing research for that video, it led me to this thing here. Before Dave Smith got the name Sequential back, he started making instruments as Dave Smith Instruments. And the very first thing that he put out under that moniker was the Evolver. It was a weird little desktop unit with 4 oscillators, 2 of them analog, 2 of them digital, loaded with all of the waveforms from the Prophet VS. It had analog Curtis filters, a crazy 4-lane sequencer, unusual stereo architecture, multi-tap delay, output hack, output distortion, all sorts of crazy madness, and a general weird factor. Well, Dave being Dave said, what if I took 4 of those and crammed them into a keyboard? And then we got this guy. It clearly has more hands-on control than the original desktop unit, being nearly knob per function, and a user interface that is clearly the heritage for synthesizers like this one, the Prophet 08, and even more recent synthesizers like the Pro 3, though much quirkier and more difficult to navigate. This synth really confused me at first, because while it can sound absolutely incredible, it can also sound like a bag of digital cats. The FM in it is wild in a very good way, but can get away from you incredibly fast. And when you think about doing FM with all of these complex waveforms from the Prophet VS, it kind of makes sense. I had the opportunity to talk with one of the developers of the Prophet 12 for that video, which is upcoming if I didn't mention that already, Andrew McGowan, who also offered some insights on the Poly Evolver.
It's interesting that you say that the Poly Evolver can get away from you very quickly in terms of, when you start turning knobs and adding things in, and Dave would love that. That's something that would make him very happy.
Well, mission accomplished there. Overall, I think it's a testament to Dave's innovation and the fact that while it would have been much more profitable for him to just make another Prophet 5 clone, he decided to do this and combine all of the things that he had done in the digital world with Korg with analog technology that he was also a pioneer in.
I say that the Poly Evolver is the Daviest synth that he ever made because it's pure Dave. Nobody else worked on it. It was just him, and it's about as pure an expression of Dave, even more than any of the old sequential circuit synthesizers, as is possible to come up with, I think.
Now, while I'm making a broad claim that it may be my favorite synthesizer, it is not perfect by any means. You can see that he's kind of working out some of the kinks. I think anytime we have such boundary-pushing innovation, there are going to be growing pains, and I think that's certainly the case for this synth. There are only 4 voices, and that's kind of a shame. Now, you can get a rack mount version of this to bring it up to 8 voices, which would be incredible if they weren't incredibly hard to find, and when you do find them, often they're more expensive than the keyboard. I think there is something to be said for having fewer voices and making that a limitation for yourself, because being an organist, I am fully aware that Bach did pretty well with just 4 voices most of the time, but it does require a lot more careful writing and careful planning and more craftsmanship, and is often not great for just improvising. Maybe that's another topic for another video as well. While we do have an early version of the mod matrix, and the modulation routing will be somewhat familiar if you have like a Prophet Rev 2, for instance, it's not nearly as efficient. You cannot just hold a button and turn a knob and then have that routing set up. Doesn't work that way yet. Clearly this is kind of the prototype for this sort of setup for Dave, so you don't have that quick ability to access things, and it's just a little clunkier to get around. There's also the issue of the pots versus encoders thing, which there's a whole upgrade conversion kit where you can put in potentiometers because it does have endless encoders, as does mine back here. And that's a bit strange and took a lot of getting used to. I'm not entirely sure I'm used to it yet, but it's one of the quirks of this synthesizer, and I've seen people on both sides of the fence of which one they prefer. it's so unlike anything else that I have that I've been willing to go a little deeper with this synthesizer because it always seems to reward the input that I put into it. And whenever you get more out of a synth than what you feel like you're putting in, I think you're a little bit more willing to learn the idiosyncrasies of that synth. And believe me, this one is very idiosynchronous. Idiosynchromonious? I don't know who cares about these older synths like this, but I've really enjoyed diving into them. If you want to see more stuff about the Poly Evolver Keyboard, you can like this video. If you want to see that upcoming video about the Prophet 12, which will be more documentary style and is taking me a lot longer to put together than I had originally thought, you can subscribe to the channel because that is coming. And if you want to brush up or learn more about the basics of subtractive synthesis, I have a free workshop in the description that will take you out of the YouTube algorithm where we can go a little deeper into all of those things. Now, if you'll excuse me, I just have to check the prices on that rack mount version.